everybody. Hello again. My name is Scott Gordon. I'm the Senior Vice President of Global Delivery here at Vaco. Welcome to Fall into the Right Career with the crispness that is in the air. Hopefully, where you are. I don't think it's happening in Nashville yet, where I sit, or where Josh Haymond sits in Raleigh, but it's on the way. By the way, today we've got Josh Haymond, who's the managing partner of the Raleigh, North Carolina office of Vaco, and I'm really, really happy to have him here. Josh, would you mind introducing yourself and tell us about some of your responsibilities for Vaco Raleigh?
Thanks, Scott. Really appreciate you having me. Of course, when LB and yourself asked me to join, it was a resounding yes, because anytime I get to spend 30 minutes with you, I will take it. However that looks, whether that's LinkedIn Live or not.
Yeah.
But definitely appreciate you having me. Again, Josh Haymond, lead the Vaco Raleigh office. Joined Vaco 8 years ago after 5 years in public accounting. When I joined Vaco, I was really more focused on our consulting resource practice. Moved into some responsibilities over our direct hire team a few years into my journey at Vaco. Moved into the leadership of our accounting and finance practice, I guess 3 or 4 years ago, and then most recently moved into oversight of our office as Sid Michener's role continues to grow, as Vaco continues to grow. So now, full responsibility for the Raleigh office, and really just excited to be a part of a great team and see, us all working really, really hard during what is an incredibly tight market, as I'm sure everyone joining probably is aware.
It's been fun to watch you grow, Josh, and everything you've gotten that's come your way has been so well deserved. I want to remind everybody that we'll be taking some questions, so you can drop those in the chat. I've got some questions for Josh kind of ready to go, but go ahead and drop those in the chat, and if we have time, we'll get to those. Before we get started, I personally know Josh. I've known Josh for a very long time. So Josh, I've got two sort of non-work related questions that I'd like to start with. You have the ability to go have lunch with or have beers with any wrestler, dead or alive. Your favorite all-time WWE wrestler, who would you choose?
I would just, from a dripping machismo standpoint, it'd probably have to be Razor Ramon, Scott Hall. From a longevity standpoint, I would say The Undertaker, just for someone who had been in it for that long. But those two are at the top of the list for sure.
Fantastic. I love that. And I know you're a huge wrestling fan. So I know you've probably thought about this, and this may take a couple of seconds for you to come up with the answer. You get signed to the WWE. What's your entrance song? When you step out into the basketball court today, I know you've got a song in your head. What is that song?
So my choice of music is definitely the gritty early to mid 90s New York hip hop, whether it's Nas, Mobb Deep, Big, early Jay-Z. That's what I came out to warm ups when I was playing basketball, and still what I'll plug in when I need to, get in that mindset.
That's fantastic. I love that. It's just like when you hear that one song, like glass breaking, it's stone cold. We could spend all day into that. So let's talk a little bit of business. So what are some of the trends? And what we've done, Josh, is I've talked to people all across the country in different markets. And what I would like to hear from you, and Josh is primarily in the accounting and finance division of Vaco, or has spent most of his career in accounting and finance. What trends are you seeing in the Raleigh area? And for those that are not familiar with the Raleigh area, what other parts of RTP, what does all of that encompass, and what trends are you seeing, say, in the last 12 to 18 months? And I want to say pre-pandemic, what were sort of the trends then, and then now in the middle or throughout the middle of the pandemic and coming out of the pandemic, what are some of the trends that you've seen from your clients as well as consultants that people would be interested in?
Absolutely. So for a bit of framing, this isn't news to anyone in our market, but just for those listening out of market potentially, the Raleigh-Durham market as a whole is not a area of huge companies. There are a plethora of early stage venture capital, private equity backed companies that in time sometimes end up getting, bought themselves. And so
Sure.
for our market, there's not the $100 billion companies. You can count the 5 to 10 multi-billion-dollar companies
Sure.
on your hands. And so when you think about, a lot of those emerging growth tech and life science companies that we've got in the market, there's always a lot of new ones in a good market. And we do have a ton of continued development in those tech and life science spaces where there's just new companies that are hiring every day. And so
for those of
it
us
is
that don't know what a life science is, can you explain that?
really, yeah, absolutely. So life science, I would say, is definitely a broad term, not quite healthcare in terms of hospital systems, although we have hospital systems. But when you think about drug development, medical device development through R&D,
Okay.
clinical research organizations, we call CROs in our market, that are the clinical testing and support for all these new drugs and med devices that get approved. That CRO industry was birthed out of the RTP market with Quintiles years and years and years ago. And so there's a lot of bigger companies in our market that do clinical research for all the new pharmaceuticals that are coming out. So there's a lot too, Scott, of companies that are providing software and services to the pharmaceutical space or life
Sure.
science broader space. And so there's a lot of there's tentacles into technology and life science within a lot of the organizations that we work with. That's not to say we don't have manufacturing and financial services and nonprofit, but it ends up being that it feels like 75 to 80% of what we're working on are tied into either something related to tech or life science.
You
And I
mentioned,
think,
I'm sorry, you mentioned Quintiles. Are there any other sort of names that are well known around the country that somebody that's watching, that's say sitting on the West Coast or sitting in Middle America may be interested in?
so Quintiles actually is now known as IQVIA through
Okay.
one of the mergers that they did with the company up north called IMS. PRA Health Sciences, which recently got acquired by Icon, Syneos Health, which was a merger of INC Research and Inventive Healthcare, other couple larger ones in the area. And then from a pharmaceutical space, it's interesting, when you talk about companies on the West Coast, our good friend Wendy in California has a great relationship with a company called Gilead Sciences.
Sure.
Well, Gilead determined during the pandemic that they were going to be moving a lot of their shared service type of work, IT and accounting finance, here into RDU. And we are seeing that quite a bit, Scott, where a company might not move headquarters or might not establish a big company headquarters here, but they do like our market for that access to talent,
Sure.
the affordability of talent. And so we're seeing companies like Gilead bring, 150 to 200 jobs to our market as kind of a second headquarter because of the talent pipeline that is here.
Nice. And I guess that's where the research triangle comes from. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely.
Good.
And I think RTP, it's interesting to unpack that maybe a little bit more, because in RTP, I mean, you've got research and development around, high tech companies like an IBM and Lenovo as well in the park. And so it doesn't have to be that it's all kind of the smaller shops. When we think about research, there's a lot of huge companies that are fueling the growth of our market substantially.
Got it. That makes sense. If I'm in a different part of the country, or I'm in the Raleigh area, what's something that I can do as a consultant or a potential consultant, or I'm playing like I'm one now. If I'm a permanent employee at another company, what trend should I be watching for to be able to land in one of these positions, or one of these types of companies that you're looking for? And again, back to what's changed for you in the last 18 to 24 months, pre-pandemic to post-pandemic?
I think one of the biggest changes, this is no surprise, is that, more companies have a greater degree of flexibility than they had
Sure.
beforehand. So pre-pandemic, I mean, there were not a lot of companies that we were asked to recruit for
Sure.
that were cool with remote, that were even cool with hybrid at that time. And so obviously organizations are having to adjust in how they're looking at flexibility and retaining talent and attracting talent with greater flexibility as part of the equation. That's certainly a little easier to accomplish when you're talking, more experienced staff, more proven staff. But just the same, if you're hiring a new hire into an accounting role who's got zero accounting experience and they're primarily remote, that learning curve, that access to all of the management team members that you otherwise would have access to in an office is not there. And so the development of those more junior staff or someone new into a career path, like moving from accounting into recruiting, it ends up being that the learning cycle is quite a bit different. So, for candidates who are looking to enter into our market, there's still, I think, a sensitivity to out of market candidates. We're still very much, Raleigh-Durham is a smaller network of the bigger cities out there. And so before the pandemic, I remember we were telling people, if you want to get to the area, you better just move here, right? Just move here first, and then you'll find something, because you're unlikely to be able to find something unless you're here, because there is so much talent local. I know now we're working with a lot more remote people that are hoping to get here. And it's actually nice for that candidate because they can have something lined up knowing that 90% of that company's remote. They can find their work. They can know that they can eventually relocate here. We still don't get asked to work on a ton of fully remote positions. So when we've got candidates that are reaching out, they're in a good job, they're asking for a fully remote role. A lot of those fully remote positions do end up getting posted directly by the companies. If a candidate's really looking for remote positions, they're probably going to apply online to it. So I'd say we're still not the only resource in your belt for something that is fully remote, because what we're seeing locally is that a lot more of our clients are kind of moving back to that idea of hybrid. But that's at least better than where we were, which was in a lot of cases, especially within accounting and finance, butt in seat for, 75, 80% or more in a lot of cases. So I think we've seen that adjustment quite a bit in a lot of our hiring managers and organizations.
What makes and to talk to people that are looking for these positions to sort of fall into the right career, what if I'm a candidate and I work somewhere else, what do I need to do to shine brightest for you and to shine brightest for a potential employer, even though I do live in Kansas City, Missouri? How do I and I've not done a bunch of remote work, and this is new for me, and it's new for you, and it's kind of new for everybody. What are some of the things that you look for to be able to? So let's talk about both of it. What are some of the things that you're making requests of your clients that have you considered A, B, and C? And then on the flip side of that, from the potential hire side, the candidate that's looking for that position, what are some of the things that you're suggesting to them, or things that may shine brightly that you kind of key in on?
So for me, I think a strong candidate on paper has a lot of different opportunities right now, right? So if you've got demonstrated track record, whether that's through promotion or through deep references that people can really speak to your ability and upside, once you have that, it ends up being, to me, what's most important right now. If a client is interviewing 3 people for a role, they know each of those 3 people is interviewing for multiple roles. What we really try to work with the candidates on, as they do have multiple offers in flight, as things are coming to the end on multiple opportunities at once, it ends up being that the professional maturity of a candidate to be able to articulate why in a pivot, that they're interested in a role, that they're interested in a company, what's important to them, how are they managed and coached best, and do they really need the hands-on support, or are they open to running on their own autonomously and upward managing as needed? Just that communicative ability to transparently say, here's what I'm looking for, and here's why this rises to the top. So when we work with a candidate where we really can't get a sense after them interviewing a couple of places what's right for them, that's
Right.
really difficult for us to make the match, because ultimately what we, in a perfect world, we want our client to be really excited about the same person that's
Sure.
really excited about them. And sometimes that lines up fairly well in a 1A, 1B situation, but ideally, we are getting inside of that candidate's head. They're transparent with us about what they're looking for. They're transparent with us after an interview, Scott, to say, listen, this compared to that, I think I want to prioritize this one. And that then ends up helping the persuasive nature in which we try to move that candidate forward through a process, right? The same thing happens if you're applying online directly to a company and you're working with HR. They want someone who's really excited about joining that company. And so to the extent that you're not communicating why you're excited about moving forward with something, then it ends up being there probably is another one of those candidates who is.
Sure.
And they're going to make that hiring manager team feel more comfortable than someone who says, I like this. This is great. Do you have any more questions for me? That's just not enough right now when we're trying to get to the answer of what's the right fit. I think on the client side, as the client is trying to, market themselves in a way, whether that's through an agency working with us or directly online, I certainly think that that's where, working with a sound agency, not 3 sound agencies, but a sound agency who's got good tentacles into the market is really required right now. I mean, if you post an accounting and finance position working directly for, posting it direct from a company trying to recruit applicants, those applicants don't know what this company's going through,
And
how
that's
they're
kind of
growing.
that goes into my next question, and you're almost there. And without, of course, saying client names or that sort of thing, in your group, your day-to-day responsibilities now, how many open positions, just rough estimate, are you working on now? And let's take one of those positions, and just so everybody's clear, and because you can be a great indicator for your own market, how many positions are open right now, and how many applicants would you say that you receive per position, and what's the time frame from application to hire? Because I know that those are all big numbers, and I think that even what I've seen across the country, they're very shocking, even to me, to see that we're working on X number of jobs and we have X number of applicants, and those applicants are getting hired, and at X amount of time.
Absolutely. Well, I've had this conversation with a few of our clients that I've known for a long time, and where we frankly are, slower than we'd like to be. Part of that is that everyone has, more options than we've ever had before. I mean, Scott, this internally, we are having really strong months, really strong quarters, but yet it does still feel like more clients have unmet needs than ever before, just because of the sheer volume of needs that we're working on. Our direct hire team is as deep as it has ever been, and I'm so proud of the work that they're doing. But ultimately, everyone on that team is underwater with search work. They are trying to do the best that they can for as many clients as we can. And ultimately, sometimes I think when we are working in that large volumes standpoint, we tend to prioritize what we think is going to, move more quickly, and what we are engaged exclusively on versus what we know 2 or 3 other vendors might be working on. Then your eggs aren't in our basket, and so it ends up being a prioritization game. I think right now we've got in accounting and finance probably 60, 65 open roles.
Okay.
And then in IT, I think we've probably got 25 to 30-ish that we're, engaged in. So let's call it, close to 100 direct hire roles. And I can't remember a time where we were at that type of volume.
Sure.
It's usually though, Scott, that like when we post a job, a direct hire role that we're working for, or a contract role that we're working for, it's usually that the candidates that are applying to that are oftentimes too late for, that specific role that we posted it for, just because things are moving so incredibly quickly. And so I think, just using that as a framing, I don't know the direct numbers of, the time to hire, but what I have told a lot of clients as they're reaching out to us with some non-core stuff is that, if in the 3 to 4 week period of time, we are not able to put good people in front of you, the likelihood that we're able to close that position goes down because we've got 20 new ones that we're working on that we know we've got to deliver for. And if it's that non-core, non-matrix role for us, we might be able to give it a shot, but we're certainly not over-promising. Scott, We're having to tell clients no on search work. And I can't remember where we did that unless it was a really, really, really poor, unethical environment in the past. Yeah. And we're doing that to people that we've worked with before. And we're asking them to hopefully, know that we want their business in the future, but right now our bandwidth is not able to take it on. And that's difficult, but it also is, I think, an eye opener for our clients that it's not an expected yes on everything we are asked to source on. And that is a little bit empowering if you're sitting in our seat and you're underwater, right, and you're like, my boss is saying it's okay that we say no to this role. It ends up being, I think we've got each other's back in a way that we know we're stretched. We want to spend our time wisely. We want to support as many clients as we can, but ultimately we're not going to be successful for everyone right now. So it really means the deep engagement, right? The exclusivity, the pricing, right? Not in terms of just what you're paying us, but what you're willing to pay the candidates. And all those things end up kind of coming into play, as well as right. Then it's got to be a good corporate culture for us to want to support it right now. Otherwise, right, we just can't sell it.
How long is it taking? And I think that one of the things that we're seeing because it is an ultra competitive market. Not only, we're talking to candidates that are moving so quickly. From the time one of your clients begins the interview, what's the time to hire there? How quickly is that happening?
Not quickly enough. I would say every week we've got 5 candidates that a client wishes they moved on quicker and didn't. And not because they couldn't, not because it was their fault, but because the dynamics at play, multiple interview stages, the way Sure. they've been set up. I would say typically from first interview to hire, right now, it feels like it's a 3 to 4 week period of time. Sure. Ideally, it would be crunched down to a 2 week, but sometimes it's good if the candidate has a few different touch points with somebody. And especially for a bigger direct hire role, you'd expect that to be a month-long process, perhaps. But to the extent that the contributor roles can shrink to a 2 week turn is certainly ideal, because those are where it's just so pressurized right now. Yeah,
got it. And just a reminder, we've got a few questions kind of trickling in. I want to welcome those that are just joining us, and please throw those comments and questions in the chat, and we'll get to those. Apologies for the titles that disappeared. I actually clicked something and disappeared for a while, so it's kind of messed that up. So apologies there. So Josh, what's more important right now? Is it a degree or experience or certifications, or what's out of those 3? What's the most important? Degree, certifications, or experience?
It's a great question. And as I think about like what I like to hire for our team to then do consulting work at our clients, which is a large piece of our business. And frankly, the platform that we've got at Vaco for, a really strong, talented accounting and finance person who's looking for something different than the rat race, we've got a great one. But in that, the way that I hire is much more experiential than the way I think probably 75% of our clients look at hiring. For me, through our professional salaried consultant pool, we've got fantastic non-degreed accountants. We've got fantastic technical non-CPA people who are doing the most technical of work at our clients. And so me personally, even though I'm a CPA and kind of went through that process of bachelor's, master's, CPA, personally, I am, we're trying to open up the minds of some of our clients that are defaulting to has got to be a CPA. Well, if this individual has 5 years of demonstrated success in these skill sets, and the reason they didn't pass that exam was because they were working 2 jobs during college or whatever it was. I think as hiring managers, we've got to be open to looking at certifications and types of bachelor's or master's programs that students are going into, and knowing that like that is a way that we've got to be more diverse in our thinking, because I feel like great candidates who might not have a designation do get passed up because of it. I can see why it is a debt cutter if you've got 2 people who are equal in front of you. Sure. But I don't think it's the right market to say, I don't want to look at a non-CPA because they don't have a CPA.
Right.
That's just right now is, I think, somewhat short-sighted. If someone does have that demonstrated experience and reference behind them to show that they can do the work of a CPA, right?
Yeah.
So I would say it still feels like to me that most of my clients are more inclined to focus on experience first, designation second.
Okay.
But we still do get the debt cut by certification and education.
Of course. What and thank you for that, Josh. That's extremely good info. If I'm a company and I'm trying to hire, what are some of the things that you're seeing in the Raleigh area that are enticing candidates to increase those applications to ones, you put a job description out there and you've got all of it. What are some of the things that are sticking out from a client perspective, from another company's perspective, that are enticing people to come to these types of roles?
Great question. And I think, in a lot of ways, when we are working with a candidate and soft persuading a candidate into why they should talk to a client, it is not just about the organizational structure. It's who they're going to be in the trenches with. It's, what is that leader like to work with? What is that direct line manager, and how are they as a mentor? What is the organization doing in the community? I think is one that has been, as in Raleigh, we've been attracting more companies here. A lot of those companies, like the Gileads of the world, they're interested in what is important to emerging talent. And in a lot of ways, talent is making decisions, yes, based on personal development, but it's also based on what the organization is doing in the community. And look at, the visceral impact to George Floyd last year and all that has trickled since then. And if an organization is silent to their corporate mission and community involvement, it certainly is not going to help their case. Sure. And so, working with the companies that we're really close with to ensure that they are, not just doing, but also then being able to communicate what they're doing in the community or in the environment or whatever it is, so that, an emerging talent feels really excited to be a part of what that organization is involved in, is really important right now. As well as, the back to the flexibility point, the fairness of pay, the flexibility. More people right now are not looking for more pay for 60 to 80 hours. They're not. They're listen, if I can get a good, stable 40 to 50 and contribute and get better skills and still have room for growth and development, I'm in, right? So I think hiring managers and organizations, we've got a couple locally that assume candidates will work 60 to 80. And their name is out there in the market as that. Right, and we got a tough time recruiting for them. Yeah. So I think gone are the 25% of the workforce being open to doing that. I feels like more of its, 10-ish% will put in those type of hours that, the first journey in my public accounting career, I was geared up to being prepared for that. And I think there are just less candidates that are interested in going down that type of rigorous route to get to the potentially the same point over time as someone who didn't have to go through that rigorous of a route. Yeah,
good. Thank you for that. We've got time for one question, or just one more question for me, and it's actually from the chat. Someone asks, what are the industry takes on international hires right now? Are you guys seeing any? And I can kind of speak to that. It just depends on the area, depends on the metropolitan area, if that. But are you seeing anything like that in the Raleigh area? Are your clients getting, dare I say, hungry enough to start looking outside the United States?
We've not seen a ton of that locally yet. I'll say yet, because when you think about when we're engaged on search work, they've already got the placement fee for us. And usually
Sure.
there then is a sponsorship, cost associated with that
Sure.
as well. And so we've not necessarily
Do you
been
have any
engaged.
clients? Are there any clients that are willing to pay those transfer or sponsorship fees right now? Or you just said you guys are not seeing that much in the Raleigh area for that?
I think more like when it's happening, it's typically going to be at the bigger companies, and in our client profile, just with those larger companies having their talent acquisition groups built out, we're not seeing a lot of that. So I'm sure that is happening at the larger company area, at least some, but we're not super privy to it just because we're not involved in a lot of those conversations with the Ciscos of the world is a great example. Like I'm sure Cisco's going down that route more if they need to, but that doesn't necessarily come up on our radar as we're not actively supporting them with direct hire work or what have you.
Got it. Josh, you have provided such valuable insight to everybody that was listening. Even to me, I learned something today about Raleigh, and I've visited there enough, and I think that I thought that I knew everything about the city and what was going on, but it sounds like you guys are just going gangbusters, and congratulations to you. If I were a candidate or I were a client and I need to get in touch with you right now, how do I get in touch with you? What's the easiest way to get in touch with you? And I will tell you this: you're on your own if you want to give your phone number. But if I need to send you a resume, how do I send you a resume? Or how do I talk to you? How do I say, Josh, I need your help?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was the first Josh at Vaco that asked for this. So I am actually Josh at Vaco.com, Josh at VACO.com. I think I was just the first to ask, not the first Josh, but that is my email address. I'm also on LinkedIn. Email is definitely better because LinkedIn, I can tend to see it during a meeting and not get to it, but you can't do that with emails.
Right.
So I promise to get back to anyone and everyone who reaches out. And certainly welcome getting you connected with anybody on our team if there's an interest in looking into our market further. Great.
Josh, thank you for your time. I want to remind everybody that even Vaco is hiring. If you know someone that has accounting and finance or audit or tax professional experience, certainly I think that we'll throw some things in the chat as to where you can reach out for that. And I want to remind everybody to join us for our next episode, which is going to be Thursday, October 22nd with Brad Rowley. Brad Rowley is our managing partner in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I will ask that he may or may not bring the terrible towel to wave at that fall into his right career, but we'll see how that turns out. But Josh, thank you so much for your time this afternoon, and have a great week. Everybody that's listening and or watching, thank you for being here again. Everybody have a great week, and I'll talk to you later.
Thanks, Scott.
Bye-bye.